case, hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video I'm going to be doing my prediction for the Tevin Farmer versus William Zepeda rematch. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So for a Golden Boy card, I think this is an excellent card, to be completely honest. Well, not world title fights, but 3 sets of world class level kind of fights, and I'm really here for it. I think it's one of the best cards in which Golden Boy have put out in a little while. Obviously, 2 of the fighters on this card, well, 3 of the fighters on this card are coming back from that Latino fight night, and I feel like maybe having that Latino fight night, even though it was argued to be maybe not the biggest of reality season shows in which they put on, it first of all was actually a really good card in the end. It had some great fights. I mean, it had Collazo versus Neomtron, which I thought was a very underrated contest, and a fight in which was still an excellent fight and has definitely brought more eyes to the minimum weight division, in which I've been calling for a long time. But it also of course had Tevin Farmer versus William Zepeda, the first fight, and that was an excellent contest as well. And then also it had, Chris Millam-Smith versus the Ramirez, which wasn't particularly close fight, but it was a contest in which Chris Millam-Smith's always going to give his all, always going to be an entertaining contest, and I feel like it was a good card in the end. So it's great to see that they're kind of up in their levels of shows, and when they want to put on a big card, that they can put on a big card, and they've definitely done that here. This is Zepeda's return to Mexico, the first time he's been back fighting here in a little while, to be fair, and it's nice to see him back fighting here. But we'll go through the card. We'll start with the kind of first big name that's on the card, being Yokasta Valle. She's returning to the flyweight division, which is an interesting one. Obviously, she normally fights in the minimum weight division, and she's been fighting there for a while, and I've been touching upon in quite a few of my predictions in the minimum weight / light flyweight division fights in the women's divisions, that there isn't really too much going on, to be completely honest. I mean, now that Esparza's left, I've kind of never seen one fighter leave a division and have such a big impact. She's left, and there's lots of different champions now, but there's no real that big of fights, and Yokasta Valle by far is the biggest name in that division, and so it was always going to be interesting to me to see where she wanted to go and where she was going to go next. And so it's no surprise at all that she's gone into the flyweight division. There's a few good matchups in the light flyweight division. Bermuda's fight would be a good fight. Sarah Bailey fight would be a good fight, but I just don't feel like either of them two are that bothered about fighting Valle just yet. So this is a good contest. I mean, Esparza had an excellent fight versus Alanis when they fought both times. The first fight was a great fight, the second fight again was a great fight, and so, obviously she lost against Alanis in the second fight, and, that loss hasn't really aged that well because, of course, Alanis got stopped versus Fundora, but this is probably a final eliminator type fight for Fundora, who, of course, is undisputed champion. So I feel like it has the makings to be a great fight again. I like Esparza. Obviously, she's on a bit of an older side compared to Valle. Not too much of an age difference, only 3 years, but still, Esparza being 35, there is a bit of an age, deficit in her disfavor, I suppose, and so she's gonna have a very tough fight against Yokasta Valle. It's going to be very interesting to see how Valle goes into this fight. Obviously, going up in weights by 2 weight divisions is a big jump, and she's not the most powerful punches in general. Esparza likes to sit down on her shots and can throw her punches very well. I'm going to say that Esparza is going to be able to win via split decision. Yes, that may be a controversial thing to say because, like I said, Valle is such a big name in women's boxing, and is kind of the face of, arguably, alongside now Fundora, but has been for a long time the face of women's boxing with Golden Boy. A win versus Esparza, would be an excellent win for Valle and would be cementing her legacy that bit more, but I don't know, I just feel like coming up in weights, I feel like Esparza is a very underrated fighter. If she can channel in what she was doing in the first fight versus Alanis, I feel like she can have a lot of success by planting her feet, throwing to the body, being, fighting in close, really biting down on the gum shield and throwing. Valle, will be willing to throw, and her last performance wasn't a crazily good performance. I mean, she got a knockdown Valle that was, maybe argued could have been a slip, but it wasn't an amazing performance, like I said, and so I feel like Esparza, she can throw, like I say, she's proven she'll bite down on the gum shield and throw, she'll go to the body nicely, she can fight in close a bit cleaner, I think, and yeah, I think she can win a close split decision. And then who she could go on to fight next? I mean, a Valle a rematch wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened. Like I say, Valle has been an excellent dominant fighter, and other than of course stepping up to Estrada, there's not really been too many fighters that have caused her tremendous amounts of problems. So that could be a rematch, possibly, that's deserved. Or Alanis again, that could be an excellent fight. I mean, the first 2 fights, like I mentioned, were great fights, and so this could be made into a trilogy now that Alanis has gone away and gotten, a kind of easier, pick-up type win away, I believe, back in Argentina. But yeah, she's back in the win column at least now, so maybe that could happen as a trilogy. Or Fundora, like I said, undisputed champion, was arguably fighter of the year last year for women's boxing and had a great year and is needing new opposition, and I feel like could be an excellent contest versus Esparza. Obviously that was probably going to have happened if Alanis didn't beat Esparza in their fight, but yeah, I think that could be an excellent fight as well. So yeah, that was my prediction for that fight. Moving on to the, I believe it will be co-main event. If not, then the Valle fight will be co-main. But an excellent fight between Oscar Collazo and Edwin Cano for the WBO and WBA World Minimum Weight titles. Of course, last time out, like I mentioned, Collazo fought Neomtrong. He became unified champion, and it was an excellent performance from him. He was maybe struggling a little bit in the first few rounds with just the short shots of Neomtrong, because he is sharp and he's patient and he picks his shots really nicely. But when he got going, he got his timing going and saw the openings, found the openings, landed very clean shots, but then didn't rush his work or anything like that, and it was an excellent performance. But he's in against Cano, who is another very underrated fighter. I think Collazo is still very underrated. I think the whole division is underrated, but I think Cano isn't getting any kind of level of respect at all coming into this fight. Collazo has been shown that he can be hurt. He was hurt versus Esparza and maybe was rocked a little bit versus Neomtrong in their fight. And Cano is coming off an electrifying stoppage, obviously not against a crazy of high level opposition. He hasn't really fought anybody of too much notice. I mean, he's fought a few undefeated guys, but nothing too crazy, and he has lost at most kind of major step ups in which he's had. But that last performance was a great stoppage for himself, and he's another guy who's going to throw and be willing to throw in close, and he's going to let his hands go more so than that of Neomtrong. He's quite a different fighter to Neomtrong, so Collazo is going to have to be aware of that. He has his own level of power and he can hurt, and so I think Collazo is still going to win, but I think he's going to win via unanimous decision. I think Collazo is going to be the more compact, neater fighter out of the two, but I think Cano could even drop him in the early rounds, but I think Collazo could rally up and get back to it like he did versus Esparza. Cano is probably going to be the bigger guy. I'm not entirely sure if the size differences, but Collazo, I think, is a world-class fighter. I feel like he can possibly go on to become undisputed in the division. I think there's a few decent matchups in the division, but the only kind of thing that I feel like will ever take him away from being able to live up to the potential in which he has is just his size. I think he has potential to be a pound for pound great fighter, but I think his size is just going to stop him from ever being able to really move outside of the minimum weight division, which is a bit of a shame. But who he could go on to fight next, I mean, Jerusalem is rematching Yudai Shigeoka, so that could be a good fight. Of course, there's Jinjira and Yudai Shigeoka, who was kind of leading the way alongside Collazo at one point to be the best in the minimum weight division, but then they both lost, and they both lost quite dramatically. So the winner of that could go on to fight Collazo. Jerusalem, I believe, has already fought Collazo and Collazo beat him. I might be wrong, but still, there could be a rematch there for another belt. I feel like Collazo should just be fighting for belts at this point, because there's not too many in the way of kind of unranked, unworld championship guys in which he should be fighting realistically. Maybe Zhu, Chinese fighter who's ranked highly, he could get a matchup maybe. If not Tanduran, of course he's IBF champion. He won in quite dramatic fashion versus Shigeoka as well. So the other world champions at the moment aren't really the biggest of names, but I feel like that's maybe easier for Collazo to come and really sweep in and really cement himself as just the best minimum weight fighter, which I mean everybody kind of recognises him as at the moment anyway. But yeah, now we'll move on to the main event. Of course, like I say, the rematch, Tevin Farmer versus William Zepeda, WBC interim world lightweight title on the line. In their first fight, I'm pretty sure that title was on the line, that interim one. It was, because it was getting talks about him fighting Stevenson the entire fight, and maybe he was kind of underestimating Zepeda, but I believe it was only a 10-round fight, so this one's a 12-rounder. I didn't realise you could have interim fights in 10-rounders, but I might just be not clued up in that aspect. But I believe that Zepeda is going to be able to win this one. Obviously, the first fight was a very surprising performance. Tevin Farmer looked very good. I thought he was landing very well. He was able to have consistent success coming out of clinch. As soon as there was a kind of bit of space and bit of an opening, he was able to land his shots and dig his feet into the ground and land well. I felt like that showed that Zepeda can't really fight crazily well at a mid-range, and he can be caught, but of course inevitably Zepeda rallied up well and was able to really fight back and win the kind of later rounds. And maybe I was a little bit surprised it was a split decision, but still it was a close contest, and maybe into the later rounds, you know, like I say, Zepeda was winning them rounds, but there was a time in which Farmer maybe hurt him. I think it was the 9th or 10th round, and you were thinking, you know, if he does get another knockdown, then that would have been maybe game over, and that could have really made for a close fight. But it was a very good fight. I'm glad to see the rematch. I feel like there's no real rush to move Zepeda along, and there hasn't really been in throughout his whole career so far, but especially at this point there's no real rush. I don't think the lightweight division is kind of moving away from him or anything like that. I don't feel like the lightweight division is really doing too much in the way of big fights at the moment, but still, yeah, like I say, it's nice to see the rematch. I feel like Tevin Farmer is another fighter who has really earned rematches because he has been around for so long. He's done so much for the sport. He's been, you know, a great fighter, a great servant, took lots of risks. He definitely deserved a rematch. But like I say, I feel like Zepeda is going to be able to win. I think he's going to be able to stop him in round 10. I feel like if he can just defensively sort out things a little bit more at mid-range and not be caught quite so open, I feel like he's going to respect Farmer that much more in this fight. And yeah, like I say, I feel like he was still looking really relentless as ever whenever you see him fight, and I feel like that is going to be at this time too much for Tevin Farmer. Then we could go on to fight, you know, of course this sets up for the Stevenson WBC interim fight, but to be honest I don't even know if that will happen next, which would be a real shame if it doesn't. But it was interesting to see how, you know, everybody thought Zepeda would walk through Farmer and then be able to, you know, have a good fight with Stevenson, but then as soon as Zepeda had a tough fight versus Farmer, everybody just said that Stevenson would have smoked him. It's always interesting to see how the fans kind of change their minds and things like that. But yeah, maybe that fight would happen. Hopefully that fight would happen, but like I say, maybe it wouldn't. Like I say, it's been interesting seeing that Stevenson hasn't really been fighting the best of guys. Obviously, maybe not from his choice, but now he's going to have the option to fight a really good fighter, and will he take it? We'll have to wait and see. If not, maybe something like a Frank Martin fight, that could happen. That could be a good contest still. And, you know, there's a few good fights. Maybe a Floyd Schofield, who of course was meant to fight Stevenson. That could be a good fight as well. There is plenty of good fights, but we'll have to wait and see. I feel like a Schofield one could be made quite easily because of course, Golden Boy's kind of link with Schofield as well, you know, partner, you know, he is one of their fighters, so that could be good. But yeah, there's plenty of great matchups, just hopefully we'll actually start seeing them in the lightweight division. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like video if you did, need a like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.